So before the grand finals round, I think formalities are in order. Hi everyone, I'm Kevin. I'll be your chair for this round alongside all of my amazing panelists. This would be Kagabe, JJ, and Valen. Congratulations all four of you for making it to this grand final stage. With that being said, as usual, the timer is going to be on the chat box. It's going to be allocated by the LO. But please do set your own timer. I'm also going to set my own timer to make sure that you guys are not going to be going overtime and all of that. Second, please try to be equitable during your speeches. You guys know the basics of this. Lastly is that have fun and let's enjoy this grand final round together, everyone. I'm sure everyone is going to bring an amazing debate. Yeah, with that being said, you guys can introduce yourself before the start of your every speeches. If you guys want to, for the formalities as usual. So we call on the Prime Minister to open this debate. Floor is yours.
Hello. Okay, I assume I'm audible and visible. Iya, sayang aku yang ada di chat. First of all, I would like to just say, Kak Chia, this is the furthest that we have ever progressed together. I'm really happy. Thank you, ya Kak. I had fun. Okay. So I will start my speech in a bit. Oh, timer. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. If you notice, apps such as Mastodon, Blue Sky, and The Truth are apps that was born like post-COVID or in the middle of COVID, right? It was around like 2020 to 2021. What does this mean? This means that from 2021, the trend of user and market demand in terms of the social media platform has shifted. And we don't think that we regret that shift. We need to support and celebrate it instead. Let me tell you 2 things. First, I'm going to talk from the user's perspective, and I'm going to analyze market demand and the user behavior of this platform. Secondly, I'm going to talk from the corporate perspective, analyzing the barrier to entry that is changing and how healthy competition can be fostered if we support this motion. First, let's talk about user's perspective. We think that principally, there is some validity to the user's preferences that exist. What attracts users to these different sites, right? There are 2 layers. First is that the interface of these platforms are inherently user-friendly and compatible with users' behavior. For example, when the form of short videos are rising, people flock to Vine, right? In the past, there is an app called Vines for the youngsters. Secondly, when short text format was preferable, people flocked to Twitter. And when people like longer videos, everyone flocked to YouTube. So the user friendliness of an app depends on what type of interaction and what type of interface people really find appealing. And it's just a matter of this app being able to retain exclusivity through other means. For example, YouTube still offers daily motion because it gives structural incentives by paying the creator. This is also why, unlike daily motion, other platforms such as Twitch that follow suit with YouTube are not left behind in the competition, and user still likes the way that Twitch worked, despite the fact that YouTube was the trailblazer of paying content creator. The second thing is the ideological preferences of users, right? Users are the ones that shape the kind of community within social media. It has always been organically formed. Nothing that social media was able to pick and choose what kind of people use them. Teenagers and meme lovers, people with fetishes, they go to Tumblr. YouTube is more educational. That's why people demand that you create a kids version, because a lot of parents think that the largest demographic of YouTube user is actually children. It's different with other apps that have less censorship and accountability. That's why inherently these user preferences are valid, not only because they like using certain features or tools that exist in a platform, but also because the ideological preferences that is shaped inside certain platforms is something that grows organically. It is not something that was chosen by the media app. That's why we think that user preference controls the way social media platform should focus their development towards, should control the way social media platform adapt with market demand. Before I continue, yes, just
again, this is just the same as round 3. This is a wrong burden identification of the motion. We're not talking about different social media who provides text or image. We're talking about similar versions, similar like methods of social media, just developed by different versions and different companies, right? So there's clearly a difference of the burden in that.
Yeah, I'm basically telling you why user preference should be the one that is being followed by the social media and not social media trying to be trailblazers. That is what my principle is talking about. Secondly, let's talk about corporate perspective then, engaging to what probably Justin actually meant. First things first, you need to know that social media was never an agent of narrative shaping. It is simply a platform. It does not have the power to manufacture people's interests and people's consent. Instead, social media has always been at the mercy of the user. So users' interests and preferences is something that has to be pandered. If the main issue that OP is going to have is that, certain platforms are going to lose exclusivity, it's going to be very fragmented, yada yada. Well, I think that social media is just Twitter, it's just coping, it's just skill issue. Their inability to survive and adapt is literally a skill issue. When you have decades of, you're one of the founding fathers of popularizing social media, and now you're literally supported by a billionaire, then you should be, as a platform, willing to conform to market demand and willing to conform to trend instead of trying to be trailblazers, trying to find innovation, etc. Because it does not matter what vision you have as the owner of social media platform. What matters is how you can provide the people what they need, which is the essential demand for interconnectivity. That's all that matters. We don't think that method is something that is important to be innovated upon. Secondly, if OP is going to talk about, echo chamber is going to be formed because now everyone only exists in spaces where they are ideologically pandered to, etc., etc., and they don't exist in the same pool where they can interact. We think that echo chamber is not exclusive harm. Right now, social media has always been like that. Algorithm has always created echo chamber, and at the very best case, the type of engagement with opposing views in social media that you're going to get is not meaningful because it's usually content that incites emotion, makes you angry, makes you hate your political opponent even harder, etc. Because that's how you gain engagement, right? As a platform, you do not have the burden or urgency as a platform to push algorithm that enacts more in-depth discussion about certain topic and a more civil discussion about certain topics. So we don't think that that is a harm that is exclusive in our side. But more importantly, we think that enhancing users' convenience should always be the number one thing that social media platform cares about, not any other type of innovation. We need to understand that when it comes to tech, innovation is something that should never be gatekept, right? Because the reason why a lot of search engine could be born right now is because Google kept their coding open source. That's why people need to simply adapt and improve upon it. That is like literally the tagline of any IT major that you will ever hear. Adapt and improve. We do not need to create anything from scratch because the only thing that we need is utilize code that is already working and then improve upon it. That is the way that you can gain improvement and gain innovations in the world of IT and in the world of especially social media. We do not need to bother ourselves with any idealistic approaches that opposition will want to pursue because that is simply not realistic. That is not in context of how IT and scientific technology has always evolved. That is why we don't think that it is our burden to prove that somehow we're going to kill innovation and we're going to kill newcomers to enter the competition, because we think that we have proven to you that the barrier to entry is exactly lower on our side and healthy competition can be created when we all focus on things that may matter as corporation. Oh, sorry, it's 7:30. I close my case.
Thank you so much for that very fine speech to open the Prime Minister case, to open the speech of opening a position, leader of UP for short.
Am I audible?
Yep, you're audible. Oh, Astrid Jason. Okay, yeah, you're audible.
Okay, yeah. Okay, once again, what am I doing here? But in all seriousness, before I start my speech, I'd like to thank first and foremost Mbak Astri for the carry and the cases that she gave, and most importantly, the mental support throughout this competition. Thank you also to my friends from SVGM and Angelic Peter for the constant mental support. I think this is my first open competition that I've ever participated. Therefore, there is a huge gratitude for everyone in this room. It's such an honor to debate for the guys, for a guy who even 2 years ago never even dreamed to participate in open competition, let alone people open. And to this point, still have massive imposter syndrome and insecurity. So yeah, regardless of the result, it is a privilege to debate in the grand final of the Open. And lastly, huge apology to all judges and Kak Ren for the confusion with me and Mbak Astri switching the tag names. So it's actually me as Astri and Mbak Astri is Jason. Okay, your eye preference unmute. We'll take one from CG around minute 5 if I have the time, but if I ignore you, then sorry. Right. We'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I haven't tried any opening lines, so let's just move on to the setup. 1. What do we mean by opposing fragmentation? We are going to oppose it exactly because it will empower people to stop in an echo chamber where it would lead to far worse polarization. Secondly, the fragmentation in this debate, we agree with CO, is that you have the same style of social media, but different companies. This is why the CEP put the example of Twitter fragmented like Threads, Blue Sky, The Truth, and whatnot. The counterfactual is that we are preferring that one dominating social media exists, which will, almost all of the discourse will be in that platform, such as Twitter, for example. I'll just bring one point of case: how this will lead to echo chamber, which leads to polarization. Let's characterize first why social media exists in the first place. 2 things. 1, to make exchange of ideas easier, and 2, to connect people even when they are far away. This is, for example, the quoted example by Mark Zuckerberg on why he created Facebook in the first place, or Jack Dorsey on why he created Twitter. Meaning that social media can only fulfill the function if there are different team of people, if there are different kind of people there. Even when there is similarities, such as in r/Manchester United subreddit, people would always discuss all the time on who is the better player in Manchester United team, for example. But this fragmentation exists in status quo, and why does it happen? What caused it? 2 things. 1, the social media establishment is already going bad. For example, we've seen Twitter post the Elon Musk takeover. But this is, however, a minor factor because 1, companies still have the incentive to not be too different, to provide some sort of familiarity, to not lose customers. Elon Musk doesn't want to lose money after he bought Twitter for millions of dollars after all. And secondly, changing app in and of itself is annoying. You have to create new accounts, you have to verify your age, you have to create new username which never been used, for example. Therefore, this is not the main reason. What the main reason is that people tends to not stand people with different ideas. This is likely because 1, the rising trend in the status quo with people having different kinds of ideas, and instead of discussing them, shunning the people who are different with them. Secondly, the precedents from Donald Trump, for example, who created Truth Social, inspiring other companies to do so. And thirdly, the dominance of certain set of demographics in different social media, creating a different type of conversation in the first place, meaning that the problem is with the people and the motivation is wrong. And despite that, companies still choose to accommodate this wrong motivation in the first place. And secondly, exactly when you have so many different competitions, you have to create distinction between yourself, and this distinction mostly derives from the regulation because it is easiest to be manipulated, for example, and what most create the the discourse, for example, because with easier regulations such as no limitation on speech at all, it will create more customers in the first place. Why is this going to be bad? 3 layers of explanation. First, on the principle standpoint, free speech should have been limited if it harms the public. This is true because 1, the companies still have the interest to act in a utilitarian manner. 2, you have to accommodate people with certain traumas, for example, to ensure that the conversation will be safe for them. And thirdly, the safety and security for everyone on the social media. This is why we ban hate speech in social media. This is why we ban advertisement on porn or dildos to children, for example. Thus, it is justified because exactly because social media is a melting pot of ideas, then freak people would exist anyway, and company will have the incentive to do it responsibly because 1, they have to make people comfortable using their social media. 2, they have responsibility to their shareholders exactly because if they are too draconian, then the company will lose profit and therefore the shareholders would sell their stocks, for example. And thirdly, exactly because of the melting pot principle, it must be balanced regardless. The problem is that some social media, exactly because there are different kinds of social medias, some tends to be more open and lax, some will be more draconian. Therefore, it will be more different and more uncontrollable. This has happened exactly because the company promised to be as free as possible or as strict as possible, such as only allowing right-wing propagandas to be posted, such as in Truth Social, to make it unique in the first place. And secondly, exactly because you have different platforms, it is going to be hard for you to check and balance. The manifestation of this is that there will be echo chamber, which would undermine the minority and underprivileged voice. Let's characterize who are people who are saying the political opinion in the first place. Those so-called political columnists and journalists who are most likely from privileged background. We've seen Najwa Shihab, for example, or Anderson Cooper, or Tucker Carlson. They have different perspective and difficult to empathize with the people who are struggling and underprivileged. But they are the ones who have the platform and they can say what they can and will affect the policy will be made, right? The fragmentation in and of itself will make the split worse, exactly because all people are split into different kind of social media. Instead of the underprivileged people forming a concentrated loud voice, they split and became the minorities who are most likely shunned in the first place. If they are comparative is that if they are concentrated in one social media, they can group, they can make the discussion bigger and attract more traffic in and of itself. But even if they are dominant in one platform, exactly people who are powerful, who can make the change, will not hear them exactly because it is on a different platform in the first place. I already characterized to you on how annoying it is to change social media. The manifestation of this will result in polarization. Because polarization happened because of lack of understanding and empathy between class and different sides of political compass. Lack of knowledge, meaning you create the sense of unknown, which leads to fear because humans have tendencies to fear the unknowns in the first place. The fear itself will lead to signals to self-defend, to hate others. This is prevalent, for example, from the example of even as old as the French Revolution in and of itself. Who is going to be profited from all of this shit? The CEOs, the media moguls in the first place, who are offering coping mechanism, who are enabling their fears, who are providing them with a platform to exchange their hate, for example. This in and of itself is a moral bet. So ultimately, it must be opposed. Yeah, proud to
Thank you so much for that amazing speech. To continue on the case of opening government, Deputy Prime Minister here.
Check. Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Ka, you're audible.
Okay, please wait for a moment. Okay. Here we go. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, guys. So sorry if I'm going to be emotional with the shout out. Yeah. Okay. So POI preference, raise hand or chat box, but preferably raise hand because I think my chat box is a little bit jamming right now. Yeah. So okay. So yeah, this is my shout out. So yeah, after not debating from 2016 until 2020 due to traumatic NUDC's total loss. So yeah, Grace was the first person that reminded me that I still got it and asked me to join English Parade 2020. We broke first out of nowhere. Sadly, we stopped in semi. After that, I was fortunate enough to have grand final moment with some of my closest friends, Santo, Baastri, Chris, Danesh, Arya, and I didn't have that yet with Grace. So for Grace, this is an apologetic shout out. I'm so sorry. It took 3 years for us to finally share this moment together. I'm proud of us and thank you so much for everything. Love you. And to Baastri, our mom in Sadar, our grand final together with Grace. Yay. For Chris Chong, bye-bye. So sorry we cut your 1 round fee in this grand final. I hope you're watching. This grand final is for you. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. So there will be 1 clarification and also 2 issues and 1 extension. On clarification, OO told us about how changing application is totally annoying. For example, like creating new username and everything. That's why they want to retain the global town hall that is Twitter, or the new name is X, for example. 1, we told you that this is not a force for people to change the app. Just because it is a trend, it doesn't mean that everyone all of a sudden needs to change the app. In our side of the house, we accommodate people who have the preference with other apps. So we're willing to let them to go to a fragmented social media other than the global town hall, that is the Twitter in itself. What does it mean? It means that this is done within their own desire, meaning to say they are consented to do so, and no one condemns you if you are still staying on X or Twitter as a global town hall. Even further, making new profiles or accounts are also within their consent. So even though it's annoying, so what? They are consented anyway. I'm pretty sure everyone here feels like making second account in Instagram is annoying, but you're consented to it, right? So yeah, I don't think that's like a harm that should be big. But even if it's annoying, the maximum convenience that the other app offers outweighs the annoyance anyway, right? So the way that you should take is that the benefit of convenience outweighs the harm of annoyance. 1 issue, number 1, is on why fragmentation maximizes the user's convenience. Grace told you, from user's perspective, we're going to analyze the market demand and also the user's behavior, right? This gives the validity of the user's preference. Ideological preference, ideologically speaking, users are the one that shaped the kind of community within the social media. That's why if they feel like the global town hall is not the place where they feel the most comfortable to, due to the many restrictions, for example, we think that this is totally fine. For instance, for political reasons, certain minority was unable to express their view on certain issues because it's easily shut down or even reported by a major number of individuals with sentiment, resistance, and even hatred to the minority, for example. That is exactly why if they move to Blue Sky or Threads or any other platforms, for instance, when they feel like this is the safe space for them, we should allow and accommodate that to do so, right? Because politically speaking, this is a fair compensation for them, knowing that Twitter or X facilitates that shutdown to begin with, because they act based on report, and when the report happens in a major number, like it or not, Twitter or X must abide to that, even though the content or the grievances that are shared or the views that are shared are not violating equity, for example. So this is a fair compensation that we need to give. That's why we support the fragmentation. OONCO might say this strengthens the echo chamber. Panels with or without social media, this can happen anyway. For example, during a coffee shop discussion, there is a discussion among cheesehead, for example, or a discussion among people with homophobic resistance, or a discussion among, racist people that strengthens their hatred towards the African American people, for example, or even backdoor deals exist. So principally, there are only 2 types of users, right? 1, regular citizens who just want the comfort of use. Number 2, influencers who are the ones who has the intention to spread their opinion and engage with a different view. So they will always exist in the mixed pool of the most popular platform. For example, Trump followers who want to move to the Truth app because they feel unheard in the others app that feel more left-leaning. So Republican influencers will remain in the more popular apps such as Ben Safiro in YouTube, for example. The same thing goes to minority. This benefit goes both ways for minority and majority, so two benefits can coexist. Then let's see what Josan told you. So Josan told you about how fragmentation will create difficulty in empathizing. This is a symmetrical harm under the world of OO, because every time minorities share certain grievances in social media, retaliation happened in Twitter or X. For example, during 2016 until 17, Black Lives Matters is challenged into an oppositional hashtag with All Lives Matter, in which majority steers the discussion to prove why white people are also victimized by the barbaric action of African American, diffusing the political grievances of the African American. That in itself shows the difficulty in empathizing, and OO needs to prove why at the end of the day, the attempt in empathizing can exist in the global town hall. That's why the second layer, knowing that it's very difficult, we told you earlier, the fair compensation needs to be given. And that's when the maximum convenience is something that we want to champion in opening government. So the way is simple. Knowing that it's realistic in our side of the house to give the compensation, we're willing to support that fragmentation because we cannot force the compensation in the global town hall or even force the follow-up action as a mitigation of harm in the global town hall. First issue goes to opening government. Second issue regarding the fragmentation's role to a healthy competition. Before that, CO.
So, people being able to say things is not the end of the argument insofar as Gov cannot prove why it's already independently a benefit, right? Surely, if you still want to pursue like things like programs like that, you probably need interaction as well. And insofar as you cannot prove that in your side, given the segmentation, probably there's no benefit.
Yeah, I think on that level of benefit, we told you earlier that, yeah, the interaction happens, but then again, some interactions are asymmetrical. What does it mean? It means that certain interaction is easily shut down simply because of the majority's inconvenience, and we don't like that one. That's why compensation exists. Second issue on the healthy competition. We told you how this creates a healthy competition. Then OO said about echo chamber. We told you on number one, why is people motivation to connect with the other like-minded people wrong? Because this is a human nature. Moreover, regular people and influencers are two different markets. Number two, let's say that this is true. OO cannot say that people are opinionated. Then also they say that people are impressionable and can easily eat propaganda. OO also wants to be utilitarian and makes platform as comfortable as possible through censorship, but they also want to create a melting pot of different views. How can they achieve this contradictory goal? My extension, fragmentation opens up promising prospect of employment. This sounds simple, but let's go. The context is that the rise of the social media usage creates a lucrative market in social media corporation because of the high mobility that requires a lot of people to have social media as a source of information, and also certain people who have the fear of missing out, which is the personal reasons. Due to the fragmented social media here, it creates a diversified number of social media companies that need some sort of upgrade. And most people are starting to go to web design, UI, UX designer, or even front or back end developer or content writing because the technology rise is inevitable. With diversified number of social media companies here, this allows more employment for the web designers, UI, UX designers, or front back developers that I told you before, which gives mutual benefit. Individually, they'll receive certain level of productivity with that great job in the social media industry. Corporatively speaking, this gives basic productivity that happens due to the rise of the users in the fragmented social media. Therefore, in our side of the house, accessibility of employment exists because in Twitter, it's very highly competitive. It's kind of hard for you to get that job. So we extend the level of accessibility on that job. So once again, for Grace, thank you so much for breaking my quarter curse in DIPO Open. I stopped in quarters in 2020 and 2021. You helped me in breaking the curse. Regardless the result, I'm proud of us. Love you. Bye.
Thank you so much for that very fine speech, Deputy Prime Minister, to close the case of OO and the opening bench as a whole. Wait on DLO, for sure. Here.
Wait, observer. But ya udah deh, I'm like, it's recorded anyway, bodo amat lah kita yang observer. Hold on a second. There is a reason why I break my principle, I break my stand of not wanting to be recorded because I have something to say and I want this to go on record. Firstly, this speech and returning the favor coming from the golden era of Sadar. This speech is dedicated to the Sadar KDMI team who 2 weeks ago being stripped of their worthy right. I am here to speak and to give my speech for Rix and Chris, who were, I don't really care whether they win or lose. But the problem was that they were erased. They were not acknowledged the existence, the hard work, their presence. It's a deliberate action of identity attack, and you are wrong simply by existing. And I am, in all of my essence, are against that. This is for them. I don't care whether I win or not, but I don't want people to forget about that. I will continuously speak up about that so that people will not forget. I love you guys. Yeah, because I am anak UGM jurusan sadar. Just kidding. But the second of all, this is a very historic moment because after 12 years, finally I teamed up with another UGM case. Some of you are too young to know what happened, and I would like to keep it that way. You guys were too young, and because of that, clean slate, all is sunshine and rainbow. We are friends and peace. Strictly no verbal intrusion. So your eye to chat or your raise your hand feature. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2. Hold on. Gue tadi nulis opening line di mana anjir? Aduh meler. Bentar maaf ya guys. Maaf, meler time. Maaf. Oh ya udah. I'm going to start my speech. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to bring 4 things basically just to clarify my speech. I hope I have enough time. First thing first, I'm going to reframe the context for 2 purposes. Number 1 is to kick out OG from this debate. I love them, but you guys are bringing the wrong context. Number 2 is to seal the deal in OO so that Justin or Adam or whoever in the closing team can like go with their framing and like steal and say, oh, we are bringing the right debate. No, I'm going to analyze the motion. The CAP is here. There are 2 very important keywords being dismissed by OG, and OO will steal the ground. Number 1 is on the increase, which is it talks about the trend that you need to justify the silver lining of what is new starting the trend. So the entirety of Grace's argument about interface, experience, and whatever, it was a mere classic any technological innovation. It is not a discussion of the increase of fragmentation, but it's a mere discussions on how, or it's a mere justification of why tech mogul, tech corporate creating an innovation with or without this motion, this will going to happen. So that analysis, despite beautifully put, was irrelevant. I think it's just because like her wife is actually intact. So yeah. Second of all, it's because the keyword on fragmentation. It is not about a new type of social media per se. A new type of social media is when they have extensively clear different feature. YouTube is totally different. YouTube video-based platform is different with Twitter word-based platform, different with picture-only platforms and etc. So this is not about the diversification of social media. It's a fragmentation of one particular social media. So second point, what that actually happens? What actually happened is an illusion of deconstruction of monopoly by creating another awful market, which is oligopoly. How is that so? 2 things. Number 1, because it is just another business product, a tech business product. A lot of the point that Astri in leader of opposition already explained, which only benefiting the media mogul. But there is an illusion of democratization and taking away the agency, reclaiming the agency of this individual, of minority, in which they think that, oh, they are moving into another safer space. No, you guys, you are being lied to by media mogul. But second of all, there is no first mover advantage. How is that so? Because the fragmentation, because it uses the same exact algorithm, the same exact method, avenue to smart in like smart referring into, like a written platform, whatever, it will only driven by just the same call coming from, I say, okay, it comes from that particular minority, but it does not reclaim the entirety of agency of this minority just because they can say something over there. It does not do anything to that. This illusion is harmful. Then what is the weighing to say, to weigh these contributions combined with Jason's contributions? In which that we as the opposition, we are actually protecting the users and the customers from this illusion, waking them up that you are only trapped to another strange of the Scrooge McDuck method of giving you an illusion of solving your problem. You are not. Then how then you can escape the problem? Closing.
I do think that the illusion to a certain degree still does give catharsis because there is no negative feedback in the new social media platforms. Why is that bad?
Precisely because there is no negative feedback, it shows to you that the illusion works, that the media mogul allowing you to live in your sorry for the reference, I know this is really bad, allowing you to live in the gas chamber before you are being gassed. Third contribution, why it doesn't solve any problem. 2 points in here. On the Prime Minister, they say that it is a bad interface. There is a current bad interface and it needs to be, revolutionized. We believe that the interface of any technology, it's not contingent on whether or not it is user-friendly, but it is contingent on the stability of that platform. What does it translate into? It translates into a new technology or a new social media. When they are not stable, what happens is either they are not going to have a permanent membership, or what's the problem is for the mainstream big global tech, whatever tadi itu, it's not directing the criticism right away to X. When people move out of X, they are not creating the right push for Elon Musk to actually change the philosophy or the principle. What happened then, it's not that the Elon Musk trying to creating a retention by improving X, improving whatever Musk is doing in the company, but what Musk is doing is trying to backmouth another social media. It does not solve the internal problem of X. But the second issue deployed by DPM on also slightly the POI coming from CG is in terms of minority discomfort. I apologize for that, and sometimes I also experience the discomfort of people and one are in social media. But another that you because the fragmentation will be harder for government control and regulations.
Hi, Basti. I think you were breaking up.
When was I last?
Hello, Basti.
Yeah.
In my notes, you said something about you understanding the discomfort to minorities and all of that. Untuk
Okay.
LO tadi timernya sampai jam berapa ya? I think you were like around 20 seconds before this. Jadi kayaknya 6 detik pas ya, kalau salah ya.
6
detik pas,
menit.
jadi ya 6 menit pas, sorry. Jadi kayak, yeah, you can have 1 minute 20 seconds to continue from that.
Bentar ya, I'm relocating to ensure my connection is good. Hold on. Kadang suka kayak gitu. Kayaknya mungkin my opening remark didengar government terus nggak jadi deh. I'm kidding. No, you cannot joke about censorship. That's wrong, guys. Please do not. Okay. Wait. Okay. Yeah, just to make sure clear, guys, I'm gonna read the motion. This will support the fragmentation. This will support the increasing fragmentation of social media. Clear. Can we go?
Clear.
Okay, I am resuming my speech in 3, 2, 1. Sorry for the minority discomfort, but this fragmentation does not actually solve problems and need actual changes. Two analysis in this. A, because then it will be harder for the government to create control and regulation. Control and regulations come from bottom up demand. But second of all, it will not going to create a crowd evaluation. How is that so? Because with one big social media, people with different polarity are going to talk in the same ground, creating an avenue. This is good because it will going to take the polarizations into the middle, and we want this rather than an echo chamber bringing it into the extreme. Fourth contribution, what is then a counterfactual? The world that is not going to happen in the world of any government team. Ironically, I, as a boomer in this debate, want a slow progress or development of social media in which that number one, the features are different and complementing each other rather than a mere another version of it. But second of all, is that the feature of the social media is a result of a long education and process and evaluation. Now, Judge, I won DIPO Open last year, so bring the trophy back to Mama.
Thank you so much for that very fine speech, DLO. And thank you so much for closing the opening debate. Now we call on the member of government, from closing government, to open the case for the closing benches. The floor is yours. Here. By the way, quick reminder, POI is only 15 seconds, yeah? So, yeah, please don't speak more than that. And time your own POIs too. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
So I'm forced to give like a shout out, not really say, okay. Shout out to homeless kiddos and the Bay Tapos. I'm trying to find pictures of like really homeless kids on my backgrounds and like really Tapos kids on the background also. So hopefully that helps. Thank you for Kevin for carrying all these rounds. Super duper happy. POI, unmute yourself. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Social media is not a platform of content creation only. It is a conception of social media is a medium of expressions and accessible to the most marginalized community and marginalized society in which people can voice out and not being constrained by majoritarian voices, for example. We'll firstly tackle OO, OG, and then move on to my contributions. Firstly, let's tackle OO, 2 reasons to frame out opening oppositions. Firstly, I do think that realizations of issue exist outside of social media. If you're not able to do this on social media, there are still other mediums, for example. But second, but even if yes, social media is the only one, we characterize to you there are marginalized people who voice out their concern to create structural changes. There are also people who voice out their concern just for the sake of it. We protect all kinds of people, especially minority, who actively do not want to opt into discussion. As closing government, we give easier chances for minority to find their own community to begin with. But here rebuttals. Firstly, they talk about discussion platform becoming much smaller. That's why they need singular platform to all gather around. True responses. Firstly, I don't think that can happen anyway, because God, like when you are minorities and you have to opt into one singular social media that operate under majority preference, because that's how profit works, it's easier for them to get looked aside and having more majority voices out there. Second, when it's only one, it constrains the idea of other part of opinion existing to begin with, because how it's constrained and limiting their right to have a safe discussion anyway, and that is what they have to defend later on in closing opposition. But thirdly, they talk about creating another market oligopoly, for example, other business attacking business, only benefiting media, for example. But here's the thing, even if we want to talk about market, it's going to be better on our side when benefits are not just straight going to one completely actor, like being like an elite, for example. At least it's going to multiple different actors, or at least it decreases the amount of power that Elon Musk has within this world, for example. But thirdly, they talk about it will be harder for government to create control and regulations. But there's 2 things. Firstly, I don't get how the regulations are going to be under control, for example, because there are multiple different people that actually opt into like security of social media, for example, that is actually working for those type of aspect. But secondly, but here's the thing, in the world of proposition, at least there are multiple different social media, for example, those things can easily get canceled in TikTok or shadow banned or actually get taken down by TikTok, because it's inherently too like minority voices, or it's too like against the majority, for example. They can opt into another platform that is not as strict to voice out those minority voices, or to voice out about other things that is opposite against the majority, and that's what the benefits of closing government is. Secondly, let's just see what OG is lacking in this debate. There's 2 things. Firstly, I think OG is out when Kim only proves a corporation will create new social media with different features suiting demand. But now that's not the case, because even with social media, with similar features and we exist, like the PM case is very like technical and contingent, and people want different things. Different like anything how differences is convenience for people. People do get more benefits from this, but benefit is more fundamental to human being, and that's why we're also over opening contributions. How does the platform for minorities to actually have their opinions, right? I'm sorry to really do this again, but this is what we'll do, just like semi-rhythm. That means our case mechanizations on OG, their cases contingent open hours, right? Secondly, Kachiat might want to protect minority, they want to opt into discussion, but the most vulnerable people are the minority that does not even want to opt into discussion, but are forced to follow algorithm in singular social media, and this is what they have to define in opposition. But thirdly, during conversation is about being able to voice out as opposed to partake in discourses, so we benefit the most vulnerable people to begin with. Second point, 3 points to mechanize our case to begin with. Firstly, I think algorithm and social media deem as an interesting push to user, like for example, they have like cooking, for example, when enough people search for cooking video, this pushes people to actually who didn't even watch cooking videos to begin with. So everything is also but the majority preference, and this is when corporation get profit when they fulfill majority demand and give them the platform. But secondly, for example, like cryptocurrency, and a lot of time like Elon Musk himself is very right wing, for example, in Twitter, and like Twitter like John Shapiro or something, right? Having all these like very like right wing mindset, for example, and it's like the issue they want to voice out is shadowed because another issue or even taken down by certain regulations in Twitter. But thirdly, I think if fragmentation does not happen, it's one single social media is going to adhere to the majority interest only, and all of that, and especially when social media does not have any other alternative to begin with, right? I think here's the thing. Even if later on CEO want to say that, oh, they cannot just say they cannot just have like blue sky and treat like it's not success. I think, you know, at least they provide a platform to marginalized individual with less chances of backlash and bullying, for example. At least it's fulfilling for some people, right? But secondly, even if they want to argue that you can just follow people that you like so that the algorithm is soothing for you even more, there's 2 responses. Firstly, it's very marginal when they're in that type of social media. There are a lot of marginalized people that has never opted into social media before, which means that the only platform you give them is platform within majoritarian preference. They don't know anything much, and they give them more and more chance to be heard by those majority. Second, also most of the time, even when you follow some certain people when it's viral, it's gonna still be there, still gonna be here and there. We say it's gonna be inherently harmful, right? But thirdly, right, I think platform for minorities, the reason why minorities does not even want to open the discussion is the most vulnerable people to be protected. Firstly, why they are the most vulnerable is because for people who want to discuss, they discuss like to well-minded people. But what is exclusive come from our side is that for people who don't even want to discuss, they don't get negative backlash. Second, people who don't want to participate in discourse is the most vulnerable to begin with. They want to really get out of this capitalist conservative environment, but are forced to continue with the discussion. You are not given the option to really just get the hell out of there and have a peaceful life to begin with, but rather you're constantly pushed to always care and to always see when that happens. You are not given a chance to voice out and to opt out of that. But thirdly, after your side of the house, you're forced people to silence people that does not even want to opt into majoritarian discussion, and it's abuse on human dignity to begin with. And that's my point, right? The third thing then, on our contribution, I think the content or discourse to be exposed to a certain degree is controlled by people who use the app. And firstly, if we don't support the overall discussion on social media as a platform, it will be unnuanced. But second, this looks like most of the post that is pushed to you as right-wing politician, like capitalistic, cryptocurrency, financial literacy, etc., and other minority issues are not being listened to. But thirdly, would that increase and ensure that other app or platform has different nuance of conversations under our side of the house? 2 impacts. And firstly, people in Twitter are exposed to like LGBT rights or environment, for example. The core conversation does not really only exist to expose people outside of conversation, but also partaking into the conversation. And in conversation, it's important to have ability to talk more than to also be listened to, and that's what exclusive and closing government, right? Even if those platforms, although not much people opt into, people who do will most likely listen to these people who want to ask something to be heard by other people, like them being heard and like by people the same way as them. But that does not happen when there's only one singular social media because they got overshadowed inside opposition. But second impact that in terms of people that are minorities trying to get catharsis, being discriminated against by your friends, and you wanted to say in social media, when you live in conservative environment, meaning our side, we can find a social media to be more fitting to them, but at least your issue will be more responded by moral rounded people that is not exactly majority and conservative, because other social media is not as right as Twitter, for example, right? Because people are not concerned with LGBT environments, since majority of the users are very right-wing and conservative and against LGBT, for example. They tend to give criticism. Lack of freedom of speech is what create unwanted responses. They're just at the house, proud to stand under closing government. Sorry, I didn't think you. I have too many things to say. Sorry.
Thank you so much for that speech, member of GOV, to open the case of CO, member of OP.
Hello, can I be heard? Can I be heard?
Yep.
Oh. PY through chat, I'm gonna take one from opening for engagement. It's like 4 a.m. here, but like it's really worth it to debate on this chamber. Okay. Panels, a broken and segregated society is a failed one. It matters not if the context of society is mostly realized in a virtual world, but just that the deconstruction of lines of communication and the burning of relationship bridges is already reflective to what John Locke beautifully claimed as the state of war, where humans always feel uneasy and humans actively neglect provision of information that could have otherwise saved their life. We reject this in closing opposition. A piece of framing for the extension. Controversially, I would note that echo chamber is not an a priori winning argument. That's why all three benches are quite uncomparative. I.e., algorithm, that is the main reason and main method or mechanism on how social media works, will to some extent keep things segmented. Like Adam, please add more into this. But what I'm trying to say is, there will always be some kind of like pattern recognition that social media will try to use to keep things segmented in either side. So it's really unclear to me how you can change that just by making a new one. In fact, I would know that some other menial arguments like easier regulation against rampant use of shady social media as a method for communication for like terrorism, money laundering, neo-Nazi, all of these rising things are probably even more important than this. That's not going to be my extension because I'm not crazy. But what I'm trying to show is that there's still massive, like a lot of arguments that sound trivial, but essentially have much more tangible and feasible impact compared to what three other benches have argued in this debate. Two substantive extensions. One, a central city hall provides a much better experience of using social media, and two, efficiency of information sharing. I'm going to tell you this story in two key ways. One, why do you have better experience in using the social media? Let's collapse and eliminate the distinction between physical and virtual world. We would both, in both worlds, have limited resources of seller, i.e. service provider, and buyer, which is the user, which means that in opposition, you're more likely to get more available resources for you because the market is going to be concentrated, i.e. you can read the best quality publication, either in an objective or subjective sense. You get much better products that are offered through advertisements because necessarily a lot of people advertise in that company, in that specific social media app, as opposed to diversifying their advertisements because they generally don't usually have that much capital that they can spend for advertisement. Or just that, think of it as a usual brain drain argument, right? Because usually if someone just opt out of the Twitter and just spreads to like a lot of other social media, and presumably the quality of information and like the quality of discourse that you will probably have, given that you talk to less people, necessarily just gets decreased as a whole. But also I want you to consider how social media works. That is to say, social media companies stores metadata of its users based on its algorithm, which is then used for two things: providing sources for its AI to learn based on input, and also for money collection, i.e. partnership with advertising companies, because you don't need to pay to use Twitter. So how does Twitter get their profit? By selling your data to advertisement company. This means that insofar as there will be a lower and even substantially lower amount of input to make the algorithm smarter, or at least not enough resources for them to sustain themselves, what will happen? One, you get bad or even worse UI UX appearance and the neglection of workers because you generally cannot afford them. You don't have enough data that you can sell, that you can leverage your way upon for these social media companies, and therefore that deletes the last 2-minute speech of DPM. Two, more rampant data selling and privacy breach because they're desperate. They don't have enough resources. They cannot sell just the surface level of the like I hate the balloons, but they cannot just sell the surface level of the information because that's not going to generate enough revenue for them. But thirdly, and most importantly, less smart or at least slower learning AI means that provision of advertisement or FYP content is not going to be too good. In some instances, it's going to be triggering contents like racism that can be disguised as anti-racism posts, given how similar they are going to look like prima facie, especially by an insufficiently good AI. They're unable to disseminate these kinds of contents to classify whether these contents are good to be given to racist people or people who are struggling from racism. Not only that, even if you don't believe that, generally people get like less good experience in their side. Note the comparative. People get substantially happy in our side. The quotes that you get in your FYP get more relatable to you during which phase of the year that you are in the relationship. Window shopping gets much more fulfilling because necessarily, like just generally, you get much more better quality products that are offered to you without you necessarily ever having to spend more money. The three primary reasons why this wins. One, not predicated on externalities. And in fact, this grounds OO's echo chamber argument, and this gives a conclusion because the data that will be at the input of these new social media companies that are fragmented are going to be really homogeneous. And AI, machine learning, cannot learn on a homogeneous databases because they're unable to learn to recognize the pattern of how individuals think if all of them do the exact same thing and interact with the exact same information. Two, this is logically prior to everything else. This does not rely on echo chamber, stuff like that. But thirdly, I want to know the conclusion. Racist people are not likely going to interact with stories that are highlighting minority survival exactly because of the AI. Because the AI knows and the algorithm learns that these people will never be able to interact with these kinds of posts positively. And therefore, insofar as they will give discomfort for both sides of the spectrum, you're unable to interact as well. So if there is a problem on AI, the solution is not to break down the AI into smaller algorithms that will continue start over from its learning, but rather make sure that it gets the best input of information possible so that it gets smarter and gives users a better experience. Opening.
Your characterization about data input is something OG agreed with. Social media echo chamber is an exclusive safe space. Discussion can happen outside. If you gatekeep features, that creates oligopoly because rich MNCs will come up with other ways to exclusify themselves.
Adam will probably engage to that. Second, efficiency of information sharing. I would argue that this is the most important value of social media. That is the biggest and the most unique benefit. I.e., you can really just run elsewhere, i.e., through personal chat or going to therapy. But the rapid and extremely fast pace of how easy information spreads to people who need it are crucial. In most instances, stories like news and increase of information as a whole to society is an a priori good thing because generally that's a prerequisite for people to make good decisions. I.e., people just need to open one application to get all the news in all instances, as opposed to Gov, they have to open application A for women news, application B for sport news, and application C for film news. But also this is uniquely valuable in other instances that are more specific to give more urgency. One, the reason why Nigeria are able to survive COVID was because a quick information spreading from their Twitter, because COVID agency uses Twitter to disseminate information quickly to people. Two, social movement and minority stories get better, and this will negate CG. Because for stories to be heard, you need what is known as initial target audience to reach this area people or people from inertia. Without that, or with your capital of political capital spread across the spectrum, you're unable to get this story to be heard to begin with. It doesn't matter if it's only a small case, but these are really vulnerable individuals that you really ought to care about. Negate.
Thank you so much for that very fine speech, member of Ops, to close the entire government bench as a whole. Government Whip, you're here.
Oke, emang kamu doang Tin yang bisa pakai background uni lain. Oke, oh iya, first of all, thank you buat first Aska. I do think that although she frames it as aku nge-carry banget, I don't feel aku nge-carry banget. I think she delivers it quite bagus. So kayak ya udah. Secondly, Hezron sama Tere minta di shout out. Probably juga shout out ke Cap as a whole because I do think that DIPO was a fun experience. But yeah, Hezron sama Tere minta di mention aja. Terus habis itu apa lagi ya? Kayaknya ya udah. Oh, the one that I tweeted, anti Dino being in grand finals of DIPO Open is a statement, okay? Kayak ya udah, probably it's probably a good thing that the team that won DIPO Open itu tim yang nggak ada Dinonya. Aku belum Dino, soalnya aku belum lulus. Okay. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. I had a strategy of really changing my whip speech, but per usual, Justin inserts a very different mechanism. So let me try to flip Justin's logic, right? Judges, how you should judge the debate is upon how fundamental is the tangible impact, right? Closing government proposes to you that the most marginalized people, their inability to voice their opinions in social media is based on a majoritarian algorithm that pushes racist people to go against minority race, that pushes homophobic people to go against sexual minority. I don't think the algorithm that Justin's explained does justice to an algorithm, because if someone talks with the keyword of trigger warning gay, lesbian, any discussion involving that keyword will still appear in that For You page. But more than that, they these racists and homophobic people actively search for this type of content. This means that the context that was given by Aska about individuals not having access because of the probability of negative flashback that's given to them debilitates this individual of the agency to voice out their concerns. You should judge this on which fundamental impact is true or which fundamental impact is worst off. Because I do think that Justin brought a few interesting things such as window shopping, things such as selling data, and the function of social media. On window shopping, let's assume this is true. It's a fundamentally less important impact rather than the agency of individuals to be able to voice out their opinions. I'm going to explain later on why this is so fulfilled in coaching government. On selling data, the biggest idea on why Uyghur China was able to be massacred by a lot of terrorist groups was because the main idea or the main information was all in Facebook, right? It's because the information was not decentralized. This means that a centralized amount of information means that companies or institutions that has a predatory interest for using this data in predatory ways has only one goal to achieve. It means that the decentralization of information provides to you an actually better protection on the idea of data spread, or at least one institution cannot attack the maximum amount of people. I think that's it, because I don't think you can really take closing opposition benefit as in far as we prove on why the most marginalized people in society are still harmed in their side of the house. I think there are very, what was supposed to be my opening line. I broke up with my girlfriend 4 years ago. I was in a time where I was not emotionally connected with my family, and my friends see me as a mentally healthy person, and I don't want to disappoint them. I wanted to shout out to Instagram and say that I was depressed, but my friends follow me there. Then I found Twitter, this trendy social media where no one knew me there. It allowed me to voice out my sufferings to a perceived concept of audience without getting the feedback I fear so much. This means that as minority, the concept of voicing out your opinions to a perceived audience is something that is very important. The ability for you to finally say that, hey, I have been marginalized all my life, that I am hurt, that I am not okay, to a perceived amount of audience without getting negative flashback that devalidates your opinion is the most important thing for catharsis for these individuals. And we propose to you that social media is an exclusive medium that is only able to provide this. 3 tipping points, judges, in this debate that you should count. First is on algorithm, second is on closure, and third is about marginalized individuals. See, I think Justin did do a good example on explaining algorithm, but I think he missed one very big part. I do think that algorithm operates under a majoritarian basis. This looks like the most interacted post is the post that is going to be pushed to the most amount of people. This means that a majoritarian social media that is not decentralized will have a majoritarian algorithm that pushes whatever the majority wants. This looks like the majority of people in Twitter being right-wing, therefore the ads that you see in Twitter are ads that talks about gambling or that ads talks about crypto, but more so right-wing media politicians actively devaluating gender minority and sexual minority tweets are still pushed under the idea of this is a town hall, any form of freedom of speech should be available. But their idea of freedom of speech is unfair because the speech that is done by the minority is then not pushed by the algorithm. The issues that are voiced out by the minority are not pushed by the algorithms. This explains to you that a centralized system of social media inherently benefits the majoritarian. A decentralized system allows individuals to go to a certain echo chamber without this algorithm doing this majoritarian act, because the majority in that social media will be those who are escaping from decentralized social media, right? This explains to you the argument of echo chamber is more mechanized and closing, but I'm going to explain to you on why echo chambers gives you closure. It's the ability to voice out to a perceived concept of audience, because being listened and your illusion of being listened is something different, because you only need the issue that someone is listening to you. You only need the illusion that someone is there for you. Therefore, you voicing out is still a legitimate act for catharsis for those who are most marginalized. But yeah, Asti, sure.
I empathize and actually sympathize with catharsis and also closure. But this does not bring anything. It's a step back to our cancel culture progresses that already it creates a polarization of segregation.
See here, I don't really care upon segregation. I don't really care if this benefits the people high up, right? Because if the segregation causes those from the most marginalized individuals to voice out their identity, to be able to freely say that this is who I am without bigots coming to their comment section saying, no, this is not who you are supposed to be, I do see that as a net benefit, right? I don't really care if the companies get money from this. I don't really care if this enforces the idea of segregation. I want the people on the ground being able to voice out their sufferances, being able to voice out their opinions. That's what closing government's going to fight for, right? Because as far as opening opposition is concerned, these big companies being able to profit from this was not mechanized or was not manifested to what harm does it give to tangible people on the ground. We propose to you about this. But why is social media actually most effective for these most marginalized people? Because some people don't have parents, because some people don't have friends, because some people don't have a circle, they don't have an echo chamber that can help them. Social media is accessible to everybody. Everyone in a single world that has internet connection can access to social media, and it gives you an idea of perceived audience. It means that you can voice out to this perceived audience that, hey, I am suffering, and simply people being able to say that I'm suffering is good. I know I'm out of time, but ako mo closing line is Justin. I think the difference are the seconds before you post that rant online about your fear of being invalidated against being heard. We choose to be heard purpose.
Thank you so much for that very fine speech, Government Whip. To close this entire debate, we go on up with
Hello, can I be heard?
I think your voice agak jauh
Oh, okay.
or something like that.
Is this better?
Can anyone confirm me? Try to stop.
Okay. Sure. I guess following the trend of shout outs, before I begin my speech, just want to say it's been a real pleasure to debate in this competition. Thanks to Justin for dragging me out of retirement. I will surely get right back to it when I'm done with this speech. Thank you to all adjudicators, participants, committees. I had lots of fun. And I don't know, I guess Justin, this speech is for you. Yay. Let me set up my timer real quick. Oh, POI through verbal interruption aja. Pronouns he, him. Okay, beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. Closing opposition holds that all other benches in this debate has been reductive in how they portray the functions and the sheer impact of social media. We say that social media is the single most powerful tool of connection available to humankind, right? It trivializes barriers of distance, barriers of time zones, in some cases even barriers of language, all to create a digital marketplace of ideas, the likes of which has never before seen in all of human history. Sorry, it was my tab. Okay, in all of human history. It is a collection of human thought condensed into a single homepage. This is the sort of thing that would give 500 BC Athenians fresh off discovering democracy, a feeling that's better than orgasm, right? So talking about it in terms of a fun little source of enjoyment with marginally different UI between different companies, for example, or having fun little discourse with people who think exactly like you, and all the trivial use cases that we've heard from all the other benches in this debate is a disservice to the incredible magnitude of this invention, which we say must be addressed with due respect and magnitude. Given that, Justin's content becomes the most important consideration in this debate, because his is the content that recognizes the draconian impact of social media, especially as a means of connection, especially as a tool for mobilizing movements, for example, and making sure that the information is disseminated properly to the individuals who need them, how it can be a powerful tool that transforms the very fabric of life for vast swaths of society. So this debate is more than about what's healthy competition for social media giants, because whatever happens, they will sit in their cushy office regardless, right? They will have a high-paying tech job, and we don't necessarily know why we need to significantly expend that much effort to reward a good competition between social media giants. So this debate must instead talk about the people who exist on the fringes of society, for whom effective dissemination of information through the machine of social media may very well spell the difference between life and death. This debate must talk about the ability of individuals on the ground to access guidelines regarding COVID, which is what saved Nigeria to begin with, right? And why they had the ability to bounce back, despite the fact that all the rest of Africa with similar levels of infrastructure as them crumble all around them. So we also need to talk about the ability of the feminist movement, for example, to collectivize their voices and catapult their ideas to virality. So we also need to make sure that we are talking about data security, for example, ensuring that individuals' data isn't sold willy-nilly to the highest bidder. And all of these benefits are provisioned to you by Justin, and that is why closing opposition has to win this debate. So firstly, I'm going to frame against the content of echo chamber, which has come from other benches in this debate. Within that echo chamber is not the most important consideration, because if you want to talk about echo chamber and limited capacity to discourse between one person and another, that is an inherent function within all social media platforms in the status quo. Because what you have in social media necessarily is algorithm, right? That social media companies want to increase your screen time, and so shows you content that you are bound to like, to keep you addicted and to keep you staying within that platform, for example. So if there are issues that people are locked in a bubble, no thank you, then that already happens in the status quo. And we have heard no delineation as to why that echo chamber is so much more worse if you escalate that delineation from algorithm to different platforms. Secondly, a melting pot of voices does not change the fate of minorities as a whole. We think that just because individuals engage in inflamed responses against people on opposing ideological spectrum, it does not necessarily manifest into any productive policy, for example. The only way that you can make sure that policy is achieved and lives for minorities get better is to make sure that the dissemination of information is constructively done through intelligent AI, for example, and through making sure that social media is not fragmented, so movements have that leverage in order to make sure that their issues achieve virality and are able to then manifest into real policy in the real world, right? So no thank you. Responding then to what government told us, that they want to create a safer space for minorities so that they are able to have discussions and interactions in more comfort. What you need to understand, panel, is the reality, which is perhaps heartbreaking, but nevertheless true, that as a minority, you are often used to negative interactions of things like microaggressions, of hiding your true thoughts. As a sexual minority, for example, hailing from Aceh, denying my sexuality, hiding my mannerisms so that I am straight passing, has become second nature to me, to the extent that process does not cause me any discomfort and pain, because my skin has already been forced to grow thick. Regardless, when I see messages on twitter.com calling for my death, I'm able to let that curse slide because I'm so used to it already. It is the very least of my concerns, right? When what I cannot let slide is all the rights that I do not yet have. It is the knowledge that I will never have access to the most basic of civic rights that most other people are able to take for granted as a result of weak movements which do not have good means to collectivize their bargaining power. What I cannot let slide is the threat of COVID looming over me and quite possibly not having a centralized platform from which to draw information, from which other people are incentivized, therefore, to engage in that collectivist method in order to deal with COVID, like masking up and social distancing, for example. This is the content that Justin gives you, and this is the most important consideration in the debate, because what you have to recognize is that when people access different social media and regularly haunt different social media platforms, they have different sources of information to draw from, because different sources of personalities, for example, in different levels of fame on different platforms, and it being the case that things like amount of following and likes, for example, is the social currency by which legitimacy is judged on social media platforms. When a post has lots of likes, you judge it as, oh, that's a good opinion, and therefore that is the opinion that I should follow. You have different actions that manifest on the ground, for example, for people who perceive that on different social media platforms. We say that that is harmful because you are therefore not obeying, for example, a centralized authority figure, and that authority figure is oftentimes needing collective action from all of society to collaborate on a single action, like fighting against COVID, for example. But you also have Justin's explanation on why social movements are harmed under their side of the house. Because what is important to recognize is that a lot of movements' freedom is contingent on them getting viral momentum. That one post that incites people's attention and draws their attention to the issue at hand. But the issue is, in order for that to gain momentum to virality, you first need to have an initial base of followers to get you to 100 likes, for example, to the extent that you are able able to appear in many people's homepages and therefore appear in many people's timelines. And in that regard, you are then able to gain that momentum to virality, which is what you need in order to create societal change at the end of the day. So if what they want to do is to help minorities, the way to do that is not to splinter the power of movements for the sake of momentary comfort, but rather help to preserve its unity so that the real change can be manifested in the real world. But that is not the only way that the united social media helps minorities, right? Minorities also get a much better user experience, for example, that increases their access to happiness. All of these benefits that Justin told you regarding better window shopping, better AI infrastructure, and we think that this is a benefit as well that allows them some solve in the aftermath of like the difficulties that they face in their difficulty of life. And because of that reason, we are the side that not only creates better societal change, but also make sure that their happiness is preserved the best. All of that reason, vote for Zio.
Thank you so much, Upwip, for that speech to conclude this entire debate. It was an extremely amazing debate. For all participants, feel free to do virtual shake hands. Feel free to pat yourself on the back for giving the judges such a wonderful debate. And I'm sure everyone, such a wonderful debate to watch. So yeah, thank you from me as the chair. So maybe the committee is going to give us a breakout room